What's up, everybody? Welcome on In One Soccer. Today, Eddie Petrillo, Gareth Wheeler, Jordan Wilson. Question: how many of you took economics in school? Just a little like this.
Woo!
Just a little
Okay,
like this.
if you are enrolled in that class but never go, does that count?
No, you have to have been a whiz and
That never
passed
happened. I just want to
every
know.
pop-up quiz too. No? Yeah. Okay. So
Get
we're
me
all in
out
the
of that.
same boat. But we're going to have a conversation about economics here, gentlemen. And it got our wheels spinning here.
Way to
Just
really
everything
sell
that's
this segment. Economics lesson. Keep it
so, dude.
locked.
You know what? People are wondering where I'm going with this. Because
Yes.
obviously everything that's been going on with the tariffs, and no, we are not going to talk about that. It just got our wheels spinning when it comes to the economics of sport in particular, when you have a league, mostly American teams, but they do have some Canadian teams. And how does that affect things when everyone gets paid in American dollars, but on those Canadian teams, your revenues come in Canadian dollar wise, and we know that the dollar is much lower than the American dollar. So it's causing all this type of conversation about, why don't we see more Canadian teams in these types of leagues? Why don't we see expansion in Canada? Well, there's a reason why. And it boils down to revenue and economics, guys. And I bring this up as well because the Vancouver Whitecaps, as we know, this is a team that is for sale. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of talk about it, but there's a lot of concern amongst a lot of Canadian soccer fans, Wheels, when it comes to the Canadian dollar making it harder and harder for Canadian pro teams to exist in these American leagues. So do you think the Vancouver Whitecaps also being up for sale, MLS talking about switching to a winter schedule, is this the biggest soccer story in Canada right now?
I said that 2 weeks ago when I returned from vacation, that this for me is the biggest story in Canadian soccer, the future of the Vancouver Whitecaps. And what's happened over the last couple of weeks with the economic instability and long-term question marks surrounding the Canadian economy, I think that conversation just continues to amplify in terms of its significance and its importance. The Vancouver Whitecaps, it's no secret to anyone, they are up for sale with very little assurance that they'll stay within the province. This isn't because they aren't a good soccer market. Their attendance is great. People care about the team, but it's about the dollars and cents of the matter. And the fact remains that the Vancouver Whitecaps do not own their own stadium. This is what Greg Kerfoot wanted in 2008. He pitched to build a stadium on his very own land in the city of Vancouver, decided to say, nope, you're not allowed to do that. So Vancouver Whitecaps have been playing at a competitive disadvantage for years across Major League Soccer, not just because they're Canadian, but because they don't get to benefit from their own concessions, their own parking, the advantages that you have when you have your own stadium, to the point where they're playing away playoff games away from home on dates where they should be playing on their home field. With the Canadian dollar much lower, we'll see where it ends up, but I know that Canadian banks have been preparing for even a more significant drop, maybe upwards of 15% more. That when you're a Canadian team playing an American league, American expenses, American payroll, which is your biggest expenditure, paying the people within your building in American dollars, that all adds up considerably. Which Canadian individual or group would be prepared to come in and buy the Whitecaps at an inflated price? You're not getting a discount any longer at ballpark $500 million. And that's what we say, $500 million US, because that's reportedly what San Diego paid to enter Major League Soccer. And beyond that, they built state-of-the-art facilities. Like they're spending the cash. American markets are in a much better position to do that because we understand that our limitations in terms of infrastructure and ability to get things built in this country with a sporting focus. Vancouver came into Major League Soccer spending $40 million to gain entrance into Major League Soccer. That's a nice little profit. And which Canadian is going to spend that kind of money? There are other markets that want to expand their soccer footprint and profile in the U.S. Is the same appetite to buy the Vancouver Whitecaps, who don't own their stadium and don't own their own training facility either. There's no assets there. So I think there's real concern within that market, what that looks like. And that's not, I don't think the story ends there, Andy. Like Toronto FC, they're dealing with their own challenges. The Vancouver Whitecaps ballpark are reportedly losing $15 to $25 million a season. TFC is in the range of 20 to 30, I've been told by multiple people, depends who you talk to. Then the CF Montreal right now, they have the lowest payroll expenditure in Major League Soccer. They don't spend a lot on that. And then with continued ramped up conversations about changing the Major League Soccer to a winter schedule with a break in between would pose a serious threat for Saputo Stadium, a place where they don't have a heated pitch. And whether Joey Saputo has the appetite, another individual who spent $40 million to gain entrance into Major League Soccer, and obviously has other footballing interests inside the province of Quebec and elsewhere, how much is he willing to, to suffer through what a change in calendar, a change in schedule that might mean? So these are really difficult times for Canadian soccer and the economy and everything surround that. I just don't think it's doing us any favors. This is a difficult moment.
So what you're saying as an economic student is your numbers aren't adding up. And it's worth noting, this isn't new to the soccer landscape. This is pro sports in general. There's a reason why, when you even look at the NBA, you got one Canadian team. When you look at MLB, there's one Canadian team. When you look at NFL, 0 Canadian teams. And then even the NHL, because hockey's number one here, sure, but certain markets are still struggling, even though they've gone back into Canadian markets. And there's a reason why everyone says more Canadian teams in the NHL. It's the dollar. This is what we're talking about. It's the dollar. So now we're seeing that as well in Major League Soccer, which, by the way, that also isn't new. Canadian fans are not stupid. They've always known from day one, MLS has made rules that have always catered to the American teams and the American players, not necessarily to the Canadian side of things. So I'm not surprised that any decision that is made here by MLS, it will always cater more to the American market. So let's get into something that you just brought up there, Wheels, and I'll come to you, Jordo. With MLS considering a change to a winter schedule, right? Lining up more with the world football schedule, lining up with their transfer windows and lining up with their everything, FIFA windows that make it easier for MLS players to also participate in certain tournaments. How do you think this would impact Canadian MLS clubs?
Not in a positive way. The work that you have to do first to actually host those games, I think would be astronomical. I don't know if you do that heated pitch. I played in a country in Denmark where if you're playing in January or February, even March, and if you don't have a heated pitch and it's frozen and you're not having these players play on turf, that's a whole different bag of potatoes that we don't want to get into, right? Everyone says when they play on turf, they hate it. So if you were to do that, what that would cost, it wouldn't be the best. And not even so much for the Canadian teams. You think about anyone East Coast. I think we went through it yesterday as well, like Salt Lake City. Like you're looking at certain teams. I'm looking at least a dozen that would suffer in terms of hosting matches, revenue, and just because of weather. Like North America is one of those places when you look at it where it makes sense to have the sweetest schedule. Like basically you have December, January off, November off, and then you're starting up in February when it starts to get a bit warmer. But I think this would really, for the fans, it would suffer, but also just the players and playing on the pitch at that time. You can't really do that.
But here's the complications, and this is why Major League Soccer is looking to change their calendar with an expanded World Cup, with Copa America, with Gold Cup, all these international competitions taking place in summer months. That calendar, MLS players are missing games to play for their national team on a regular basis because of the fixture congestion, both at the club level and the various competitions they play in, as well as the international calendar. They think that it'll be easier for them to line up with the winter calendar, take, a 5-week break, through Christmas time into and beyond the month of January. And that's the way around this. I mean, it's a risk for northern climates, but again, this will empower the Canadian owners to decide what's best for them. That's what this is about right now. The Whitecaps are for sale. I mean, Greg Kerfoot has done a wonderful job contributing to the soccer infrastructure in this country for a long time. But what is he, in his mid to late 60s now? Like, this is about estate planning. This is about moving forward and making sure that you have your ducks in a row. Saputos have done a wonderful job, facilitating the growth and opportunity within the province of Quebec. But what does the future look like for CF Montreal? These are relevant questions that Canadian soccer and the people around the game need to be asking right now. None of us want to see this. I hope I'm wrong. I hope there's sensible solutions that can come about. But we're at a point right now where we need to look after our own in this country. And for me, that means strengthening our domestic leagues and supporting them as much as possible. That inevitably is going to be the backbone of football in this country. And that's where the focus should inevitably turn, and strengthening those properties and giving them the full support that they require, and quite frankly, they deserve and need to move forward as well.
Andy, we're at a crossroads right now. The people that are in place to make those decisions need to make the right one for this game in the country, for sure.
Yeah. Listen, at the end of the day, obviously the Canadian Premier League, this is a league that wants to continue to grow, expand. We know the benefits to players. And when you just kind of look at everything, you wonder, hey, is it time to really, really turn your attention as well, fans, Federation, Canada Soccer, and really start to promote and strengthen your domestic league, which, by the way, is what the Americans are doing with theirs. Yeah. It's called MLS, Major League Soccer. Start to do it with CPL, Canadian Premier League. And let's go to the CPL because we're going to see two of those teams competing in CONCACAF Champions Cup. And let's begin with Forge because guys are getting a big player back. And I say back because Alessandro Hadjabrapor is returning after working out with some MLS clubs. He's a former CPL U21 Player of the Year, and he will be available for tomorrow's CONCACAF Champions Cup versus Monterrey. So, Jordan, how big is this to get him back? And I'm also curious from a player's mentality, is he ready to go? Because obviously, he wanted to make a move. You work out with these clubs for a reason, and maybe he might feel like it's a setback. So great to have him back. Are you concerned at all about mentality?
Great to have him back. Obviously, he fits into Forge. He's part of their makeup. And I think there aren't many people that remember him at Pacific because he's just been such a huge part of Forge's fabric and the success moving forward. And he just seems to get better and better every season. I think for a player like Hadjabrapor, I don't think that he's upset or disappointed for too long. Naturally, when you leave a club or you say you want to try something new, you're thinking how far you can go. And maybe to end up back at Forge, I don't think that's a bad thing for him. I think that's for a player of his pedigree, the fact that Forge are always playing in these big competitions. For me, it makes sense. If you're going to leave Forge, you want to make sure you go to a better place than that you're playing. So if you went to Orlando City SC and went on a trial, where you're going to be riding the pine all the time and being on the bench, is that a better situation for them? I understand. People are like, Europe, you want to go. But we're at a position now, and I look at Forge and the games that they play and the magnitude of what they bring. If you're a star on that team, that means a lot. That actually says a lot. And for me, this region and in football. So it's one of those, probably the plane ride back from the West Coast to Hamilton is probably where the disappointment ends. But you're playing in a big game tomorrow. I'm sure he's going to bring everything he has.
I'm really surprised that someone hasn't given Hadjabrapor more of a look, whether it's in Major League Soccer or abroad. This is a player who just turned 25, is coming off his most well-rounded campaign on record. I look at some of the frailties, even within the Canadian MLS sides. I think Hadjabrapor would be a fit with all three, quite frankly. So it does surprise me that he hasn't gotten that move, first and foremost. So this is a gain for Forge. Like the loss of everyone else that maybe didn't make this move to bring him in, this is Forge's gain here. And Strong, he stays in a strong side in a group with the new additions, could potentially be even stronger. So, and it puts Forge in a better position to compete this week in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. If you took him out of the team, I don't think there was a like-for-like replacement. They maybe would have played in a different way, but a little bit more stability through the spine of the Forge side, I think could really benefit them starting Wednesday night.
Wheels, you know more than me, about this matter. For me, it's not even so much about you do, buddy, big bro. But I think it's not so much like quality with the MLS or that jump. Sometimes for me, it's just about profile, right? Like, I always say, would you rather be like a big fish in a small pond? And that's maybe no disrespect to Ford, but that's what the situation might be in terms of Forge or Orlando FC. But I don't think the quality is that much different. I'm gonna say this now: the MLS that's there today, Jordan Wilson could have played in it. The MLS 10, 15 years ago, a bit harder. And that's just what it is. One, because of how many teams. There's 30 teams. You're telling me all 30 teams have all ballers on them? No chance. Yeah. We're not doing that. And I think with Hadjabrapor has a quality, but maybe doesn't have the profile to slide into a team. Chills, why are you laughing? This is
I'm laughing.
That's serious.
I'm not laughing because I don't think you can do it. I'm laughing because last year you were telling us all that I'm going to be back in the Canadian Championship. You just watch out.
It's still time.
Now I'm going to do the MLS. Where are you going?
I just
look at What's happening?
Sorry, I was asking the Wheels. Let me just cover your side of the screen. Hold on, Go ahead, Wheels.
I just look at the Canadian MLS teams, and there's a number of CPL players that I think have shown how good they can be over the years that fit positions of need. The Whitecaps would have the deepest central midfield group, but CF Montreal and Toronto FC, I mean, Hijab report for me, like, it would have been worth a look. I said the same thing about Garvin Matusala. I think that he kind of fits the bill. I'm surprised that he wasn't given a look. I can continue on that list, but this is just the latest one. And if I'm Hijab Report, I play with a chip on my shoulder. These CONCACAF Cup games, when you're playing in the Canadian Championship, like, I go out with something to significantly prove here, because I think he's been slighted in a way, or at the very least overlooked.
Yeah.
Just a bit of an update, gentlemen, as we stick with Forge, because yesterday we reported that Malik Olawale-Bellevue was going to go and join Chesterfield in the second division in England. And it appears the deal has fallen through. Player and team couldn't agree on terms of a deal, even though a transfer fee had already been agreed upon. So when we start to find out more, we will let you know more. Obviously, that is disappointing for the player. That was a move that he was looking forward to, that Forge was looking forward to. But when more information comes out, we'll continue to update you on that. Having said that, it is worth noting he will not be available to Forge on Wednesday. If you're Bobby Smirniotis, Jordo, what is the message to your team ahead of tomorrow's match?
Take care of the ball. The colder, the better. And I just think with the new players that they signed, the new acquisitions that Ford signed, but also the core that they have, like, yes, you're not going to be the fittest that you need to be to go and play this match, but you have more than enough to go and compete. I think starting well, if I'm in that locker room, if I'm wearing orange tomorrow, I'm saying let's go for it. Like, let's go for the jugular. Let's make sure in the first 20 minutes we get something out of this. Because for me, Forge have enough to go and defend in bigger moments of the game. Like, yeah, it's hard to just sit back for 90 minutes. But if they score and take a lead, then you now have to get Monterrey to come out of this shell and to go forward. And then you can maybe go on counters. Then you can have moments where you could really dictate how you play. So I would say throw caution to the wind. Really go after this team. And we know that they're Mexican Giants. We know that they have players that could hurt you, even if they come with 5 starters. But you're at Hamilton Stadium. This team is well equipped to go and compete, and I think they could do it.
So who needs to step up for Forge, Wheels?
To Jordan's point, I mean, they drew CF Montreal at home. They beat Toronto FC at home last year. So there's reference points that Bobby Smirniotis can turn to. And as for the player he's going to turn to, it's the player he always does in these big games, and that's Kyle Becker. I mean, he's still here, and he's still playing. By the way, the last time we saw Becker and Forge play in the Battle for the North Star Cup in Calgary, I thought he was arguably the best player on the field and definitely the best player for Forge that day. That's just how instrumental he is. I think in games like this, I mean, Forge are a much more experienced team now, bringing Babuli back. Brian Wright might not have experience playing in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, but he's an older player now. I don't think that this Forge team will be phased, but in times of difficulty, you turn to your captain, and Becker provides that calmness, that steely demeanor that you want to lean to and look for in big games like this. So Becker is the main man, and he will be the main man on Wednesday.
Andy, I'm sure in your playing days, but also covering the game, people say that the game slows down a bit and it's always about training and your preparation. I asked Dan Nimick, players that are coming to this team, this new Forge side, and like, who's got you settled? Who's the one that you're looking to in the locker room? Everyone says the same name. It's Becker. He's the one that's pressing and getting everyone going. The staff loves him because when he's on, he's making everyone who's playing at an 8 play at a 10, and he just pushes a needle. So Wheels is totally correct with that one. It is Kyle Becker.
When it comes to the weather, do you think this is something we make too much of? By we, I mean media, fans. We always talk about it, right? Because we're saying it's going to be cold for both Forge and Cavalry when they host these Mexican teams, and we're going to freeze them out, baby. I mean, is this something that is actually a factor, Wheels, or do we give too much credit to Mother Nature?
I think so. When I was playing, I felt the cold, certainly, and it was something else to take into consideration. Whether it's cold, wet, slippery, these are all things that plant seeds of doubt. So I don't think it's blown out of proportion. And it also depends on how cold Are we talking about hovering around freezing? Or are we talking about minus 10, 15? There's a distinct difference. I remember I was playing at UQAM in Montreal, the Canadian Championship, played for a university title back in the early 2000s. And it was so cold, the waterfall was frozen that was coming down the one side of the stadium. And honestly, Andy, it was so cold. And I was a guy, no gloves, no long sleeve shirt, like everything exposed. And I braved it. But 5 minutes into the game, I was kind of regretting it, to be honest with you. So it stings. It matters. You feel it in your lungs. You feel it in your bones. I think it's a real issue.
It just meant you weren't running hard enough. You need to generate the heat.
I wish.
By the way, we're told it's going to be -7 tomorrow, but it's going to feel like -11 during the game.
And that wind tunnel at Hamilton Stadium, baby, go straight through. Love it. You're going to catch down your chest. You talk about the external factors, Trills. You ping a ball to me, Wheels, 30 yards in the sun, take down the chest, feel nice, feel like Pele. Ping the same ball to me, and it hits the sternum. Your bravery, that down meter of bravery, you drop that nice to the left. That goes away. I'll block. I'll put anything in front of a shot. When it's cold, you're okay putting a leg out there. Maybe you're not throwing. So it matters. And I think it favors Forge tomorrow.
Jordan, even lining up for a challenge, like if you get stuck in, you want to be the one delivering. You don't want to be the one that's like taking that hit, right? So
even taking the hit, falling down, getting up in the cold,
yes.
It is different. It is such a different feeling.
You guys are weak. My reporting doesn't change at all when
that is a lie. Lies.
My neck doesn't work when I'm cold.
Life is freezing. That's
news.
You.
By the way, I complain the entire time when I'm frozen as well.
That's
different time.
You're supposed to not answer that quickly. Okay. This week, there have been 3 major player signings in the CPL. Atletico Ottawa announced the signing of 20-year-old Canadian Loic Cloutier. Cavalry announced 28-year-old defender Kanija Elva, who returns to Calgary after a lengthy professional career in Germany. He'll be available, by the way, for Calgary's CONCACAF Champions Cup versus Pumas on Thursday. And, of course, we talked about Massimo Ferrin to York. So, Jordan, which of these 3 players do you think will have the biggest impact this season?
I heard Kanija's a baller. I'm expecting great things. As a defender and a defensive unit that Calgary has, he'll probably slide right in and be great. But the reason why I'm picking Massimo Ferrin is because I look at York and I'm like, they're just such nice guys and good players and are from the city. But they need someone that can really go and thrive. Someone that has a little bit of a killer instinct, that seems to be in the right place at the right time. And I know under Mauro Eustachio and the way that he's going to play, it favors a player like Ferrin. So I expect him to come in. He should be scratching at double digits this season. There really isn't no excuse if he's healthy. If he can play north of 25 games consistently, there's no reason that he should have a goal or assist every other game. Like, he's that good. And if he gets that back and within that club, he can produce.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You like anyone there, Will?
It's Elva for me. I know he hasn't played for a little bit now, but I'm kind of looking at another big German that left his mark last season at Cavalry, a team that needed a little bit more attacking depth, some attacking punch. And Elvis seems to be a guy that can really hit the ground running and fits the profile to a T of what Cavalry and Tommy Wheeldon Jr. needed. I mean, I'm old enough and been covering the game long enough in this country. I remember Elva, like when he was a teenager, he was this buzz player. He was training at Arsenal. Barcelona was having a look. And then he had some passport things and then ended up kind of playing in lower levels of German football up until this time. Plays internationally with St. Lucia. I believe he scored on his debut as well. And so, I think he is the type of profile that does well in this league. Another forward option for Cavalry. I think that this is an astute signing, a really good one as he comes home to play in Calgary for Cavalry.
I'm curious to know if there's been a CPL offseason move, and I'll start with you, Wheels, that you think has flown under the radar.
Yes. On yesterday's program, I think that York United have had an under-the-radar transfer window. I think they brought in some really intriguing parts. No better exemplified by Gabriel Bitar. The Bitar hero is the guy that I'm looking forward to play. His attacking I guess, numbers and how effective he was last year were affected by the downturn at Vancouver FC. For the last few months of the year, just from an attacking perspective, they just didn't have it. They were mixing and matching in terms of their personnel and what formation they play. But I think that coming home to York United will provide him a little bit more stability. Remember 2 years ago, he had 6 and 6 and was one of the most attack-minded or creative attacking players in all of the Canadian Premier League. I think that the players that they brought in around him, it kind of suits him to a T. This could be a big year. Still at a good age, Andy, 26 as well. Gabby Bitar completely has flown under the radar here.
I like that. Okay. Is there a CPL club who's winning the offseason for you, Jordan?
By a landslide.
So far.
But can I pick a player as well, too, that's flown under the radar?
Okay, you're allowed.
Quick, can I go back just a little bit? I think Isaiah Johnson. Like, he was a little bro for me at York United, but I think that's a huge pickup for Patrice Geyser. He spoke to me about him in the offseason if he's going to go and acquire him. And I see a midfield now where you have Caligari as an option, Rampersad, and Isaiah Johnson as well. They have a bit of bite now in Halifax. So I'm looking at that with Yesley in the goal and a bunch of center backs that they could use. If they can get a 9, I mean, Halifax could be hosting. But Forge has won the offseason by a landslide. By a landslide. They picked up the play. Say it with me, Trills. The player's player.
Player.
Picked him up. Put that in the bag. Got Hajabapur back. Got Dan Nimick playing in the back. There's a kid, I can't pronounce his last name, but Keto in the midfield, like a 20-year-old. That's an option. Noah Jensen's about to have a breakout year. This team, even though I know he's under contract. Babouli! Oh, let's just throw him to the mix. Like, they have won. We talked about Calvary last season winning the offseason. Rama comes home. They have a left back, that is Serbian international, Marco. Can't pronounce his last name. I'm working on it, guys. But Marco.
We're still, we're not in mid-season form. So we will get there.
I'm learning. And I don't want to say it wrong, so I'd rather just say Marco, the left back that will probably feature.
Gotcha.
They have won by a landslide, for sure.
Okay.
The reason why, though, they've won by a landslide is because instead of unlike last year when they left their business after the CONCACAF Champions Cup, they've got it done early. That's why we have more of a complete picture of what they look like versus what other teams look like. I think Halifax has had a really good offseason so far. I'm intrigued by the direction that Atletico Ottawa are going. As I mentioned, York United, big fan of what they're doing. And don't sleep on Pacific either. I think Pacific have brought in some interesting pieces, namely Marco Bustos, but it's incomplete for all those aforementioned clubs still now. Forge is just ahead of the game.
Yeah,
still lots of time.
There's a lot of time.
Mm-hmm. All right. A lot of stuff that's getting us excited for the CPL season, no doubt. Of course, CONCACAF Champions Cup, which will begin tomorrow right here on One Soccer. Let's get to our Tonybet top picks. Okay, so yesterday we covered the lines for Forge, Monterrey, Cavalry, Pumas. Goal totals have now been posted on Tonybet. Do you still think, Gareth, that there's value betting the under in Hamilton tomorrow? So under 3 goals is minus 106. Under 2.5 goals pays plus 143.
Under. Under. 100%. Under 3, that means if 3 goals are scored in the game combined, then your bet is a push. But I like the under here. I feel like the goals that Forge and Cavalry conceded last year in this competition were mostly self-inflicted wounds. I think that both teams are more prepared to go into these games this time around. The friendlies that they played, they being unders, I think that that's where the game will trend, especially if it's cold and miserable in both places. So first leg unders, both ways for me, are the way to go. That's the way that I would be playing it.
Okay. All right. When it comes to Cavalry and Pumas, so that's Hamilton. Now we make our way to Cavalry Pumas. Jordan, if you think there's going to be goals in this one, over 3 goals is plus 106. Over 3.5 is plus 154. How many goals do you think?
Okay, so if it goes over 3, that means for me, you're gonna look at that Pumas is spanking some tail, and I don't want that.
You need 4. You need 4 goals in that game.
So.
To win.
I don't think there's going to be more than 4. I think it's going to be a close one tomorrow. I think so. Sorry, on Thursday. I don't think so. Yeah. I'd say, 2.5?
Under.
Okay.
Under.
Taking the under.
Under.
Well,
One more time.
I want goals because I like goals. So we'll see what that ends up happening. I don't want to push whatever Wheels was talking about.
When you said it, you look weird. You didn't know what it meant. It's like, but
I got to learn my betting lingo. Either way, I know Masaka, and I can't wait to watch tomorrow. Thanks for watching today.
See ya.